I was telling the earlier group that I went on a journey this summer, and I wanted to affectionately call it a book tour. But I'm here to share with you, it was more like a journey of the soul. My soul went on a journey to discover itself on a deeper level. And why I want to share that with you is each one of you is on a journey of a soul. And it doesn't matter what you're doing or how you're doing it. Each moment, every second of every day is an experience that your soul is having. Now we have a choice. We can experience that with our soul in flow, in happiness, in joy. Or we can experience that in strife, in stress. And either way, it's an experience. Now our choice is, some people want to say fear or love. And to me, love is flow, and fear is everything that blocks me from experiencing flow, harmony, peace, joy, all those things that make us feel good inside. Now, one of the things I've learned in life is because I was always looking for that perfection of always having the warm and fuzzies inside. But sometimes when you fall into the area where it's not so warm and fuzzy, that's still just as much as an experience as the other. And so I had to stop and realize that if I look at everything, even the times that that my ego wants to judge as not so good, as an opportunity to grow and experience myself, my soul, on a greater level, then it flips everything. And it flips it to a point to where I enjoy every moment, even when I'm getting news that I don't necessarily appreciate. And what happens is that when you follow and have an inner relationship with your soul, with that divine energy inside of you, then that guides you everywhere. It takes you here, it takes you here, it takes you here, it takes you here. And I want to share with you guys a quick story that I experienced at the beginning of this year. My mother transitioned at the beginning of the year. And I'm going to tell you, most people would say, I'm sorry. It was one of the most beautiful experiences I've ever experienced in my life. She still talks to me. I still feel her. And what was even more interesting is that her celebration of life that we had at the river close to my house, a woman came that I'd known. She'd been in one of my workshops 2 years ago, and she just happened to be working with my mother at hospice the last 3 months that my mother was here. And what was really cool about that, she says, you got to come to the Unity on 4th Street and meet this gentleman coming into town. His name is Dr. Raymond Moody. I'd never heard of Dr. Raymond Moody until January. I'm just going to let you know. And then the day after that, I had what he would describe as called a shared death experience after the memorial. So I went to see him. Incidentally, at the time, I worked for MetLife, and the MetLife blimp flew over her memorial and hovered over it, her picture, for 15 minutes. Tell me that was not my mother saying to me, I'm still here. I can give you at least 200, maybe 100 to 200 stories of this over and over and over again. So we go to this workshop, and there's a crowd of people that would fill this sanctuary because it's about this size. And my friend and I were sitting next to each other, and this whole place is crowded except for this one seat is empty. And it's held empty for all this time, and people are walking by this seat, I'm like, why isn't anybody seeing this seat? So my new and very good friend walks and sits down right there, and she has trouble finding a parking space 3 times before she walks into the workshop. And she's here today. Dr. Rebecca Merce is in the audience, and I'm really glad she's here. But she sits down, and we immediately connect and become really good friends. So I'm telling you that everything happens for a reason. There is a divine flow to everything. And the universe pushes and molds things, and when we fall into a flow and we don't judge it, everything happens for a reason. So I got to meet a wonderful person, and I've got a new friend, and we've gone through some major experiences. Incidentally, I got to meet Dr. Raymond Moody, and he came on my radio show. And what happened is there was some healing that happened there because I got to understand what I experienced. And when I finally got to understand and talk to him and understand what I experienced, I stopped judging what was going on. And I'm here to tell you that the relationship to people that have transitioned is very strong when they're around. Now, where am I going with this? Because the name of my book and my teaching is Peace Be Still and Soul Work. There is a very little difference. This body right here, this shell that walks around and carries our soul, it is just one aspect of you. We are oneness. Everything about us is oneness. All of us here, our hearts and souls are connected at some level. And we're like a cell in this gigantic body. But we're not just that cell. We're also the whole. And nothing is more demonstrated than in 1 Corinthians 12, where the teachings is saying that we're not only the foot of the body, we're the organs, we're everything else. And most people want to just see them as themselves as the cell. But this is what's really funny. One day I was in meditation, I heard, well, Jeremy, your toes can't say to your heart, I'm not going to do this anymore. We're just not going to work with you. What would happen without your toes? You'd probably fall over. And your heart can't say to your lungs, or your lungs can't say to your heart, I'm not going to work with you anymore. I'm sick of you. I'm tired of the way you work, and I'm just not going to give any more oxygen or blood. What would happen to your body? It wouldn't function very well. So there's a unison of all of us working together, and this flow of this whole body of energy, of spirit, just comes together. And every time we look at somebody and think that I'm mad at them, or they're doing something against me, or they're just not working with me, and we start to judge them, guess who we're judging? Ourselves. And what's even more incredible is that the limbic system in our brain, if we were to go up and hug somebody and love them, guess what we're giving love to? Ourselves. The limbic system doesn't know any different. And when we're angry with people, it only affects ourselves. As a matter of fact, I can tell you that anger, and one of the things that I teach is that when we feel anger, the body starts to constrict, and it does this. And it blocks not only the flow of energy all around us, but it blocks the flow of chi, or God, that is working in us. And what is profound about that is that what is going on in here is happening out here. So if you're constantly constricted, not only is it causing health problems within you, it's also causing a whole bunch of stuff out here. So if you're always upset about what's going on out here, guess where you got to look? Right in here. And so some people hear me say that and they say, well, Jeremy, are you just telling me I'm a bad person? I'm like, absolutely not. What I'm saying is just take a look at it. That's all. Let's take a look at it so you can go into flow inside of yourself. And when you go inside and flow inside of yourself, guess what happens to your world out here? It goes into flow. And so my journey that I went through, I have so many stories that when 18 states, you have lots of time to think. When you're driving sometimes 500-600 miles a day, you got a lot of time to think. And you're driving in the van, and one of the stories is that I had a fear of going into driving in mountains. And let me tell you, the Appalachian Mountains or Tennessee Mountains are nothing compared to the Montana Mountains. And so I'm sitting in there, and I'm one of those types of people. If I got a fear, because I know that fear does what? It constricts the flow. And so my mother had taught me, she was a Qigong practitioner, and she was my Reiki master that taught me Reiki. So she taught me, Jer, there's a life force energy that flows through all of us in all things, and it's creating all of this at all times. And she says, every time you get into fear, there is a block of energy that forms inside of here. And when that block of energy happens, that block actually creates a blocks of everything coming out here, and that's how you experience. I was like, oh, this is pretty cool. And then, but I didn't really understand it at the time until I had to start actually practicing it. So anyways, I created a life of where I have a fear. I just go straight into it. So here I am driving through Montana, and I'm great. There's mountains on either side of me, and the road's going. It's all flat, plain state. And then all of a sudden, because I'm going to this place, little town called Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. And in order to get to Coeur d'Alene, it's through mountains for about 140 miles straight up and straight down. So I'm like on my van going, Well, I've created a process. What I realize is that there's all these voices going on inside of you. Those are your thoughts, your memories, your feelings, your psyche. Your psyche is this vast thing. And it's got a whole bunch of voices going on inside of it at times of, well, many times. And so we want to get into stillness. So I start saying to this voice that's saying, what if we fall off the side of the mountain? And I'm like, and I jump down and I'm driving and I'm like, little Jeremy, your inner child, I am sure that the engineers that are educated in this building roads knew that when they were building this that you could drive more than 40 miles an hour. The Montana residents that are driving by you and honking their horn, they're proof of that. And I'm like, I love you, but how about we increase it from 40 to 45? So I'm like, and I go to 45, and then I work myself up to 50, and 55, and 60, and 65 at the speed limit. And so then I'm taking deep breaths in, and I realized, I said, see, was that really that bad? Isn't this kind of like your mother when she was teaching you how to ride a bike or swim? And so what happens is that we have to be our own nurturing self inside to overcome these fears and these blocks. This is self-healing. We face our demons, we face our fears, but we do it with love and compassion. The normal voice that would happen before I started practicing, and that most of us can relate to this, is, why are you so afraid of this? Let's just do it. Or, no, I can't do it. Somebody else is going to have to drive. I can't do it. And so that voice is the one that keeps us from experiencing. I work as a life coach with many, many people that tell me I want to do this with my life. I'm like, well, then do it. Well, it's too hard. Well, it's only hard because you made it hard. Well, I would have to do this. Well, then what's the first step? And then you take the first step, and you take that next step, and you take that next step, and you take that next step. 6 years ago, when I lost my job, I was fired, lost my car, lost my house, lost everything in my life, had my storage locker raided, and stolen everything out of it. I was at that place of, what am I going to do? And I didn't have a lot of money, and I thought that money was the force that drove my happiness. And I even got my cable cut off. This is when I stopped watching TV, because I didn't have a choice. And so I realized that I needed to get inside of myself and start looking at it. I had the perfect opportunity. The universe just blessed me. And so I spent that time inside of myself, looking at all those voices. And then I got a job at $6.85 an hour in comparison to my job that was over $100,000. And then I had to go through all the voices that says, what is going on? I base my life on money. So I had to look at all those things that when a boss would tell me what to do, my inner voice would come up and go, I used to be the boss. And I have to go, it's okay. Because this is about a lesson. Because it wasn't about money in the first place. So what happens is if you guys can take a second of every day and listen to the voices going on in your head, and some people say, what is he talking about, voices in my head? There's emotions and feelings going on inside of you all the time. And when we can master this, as Jesus taught us, Jesus says, I have mastered this world. I am going back to the Father. How did he master that world? And some people will say, well, he has divine energy. We all have this divine energy in us. The only thing blocking us from seeing it is our own sense of insignificance. That's it. And so when we can commune with that energy, when we can understand that energy, when we can become self-aware and love ourselves at all levels, body, mind, and spirit, then we will start to change our world. And there's an alchemical process that does that. The more you get into a knowing or a love as opposed to being in a fear. There's a lot of things going on in this world right now. There's a lot of things that are going to make you react. The idea is to stay still, even when there's things that make your sense of security collapse. I'll end with this thought. Jesus taught us that we want to build our foundation on rock. What is that rock? That is spirit. That is consciousness. That is everything that is part of us. But we know we're not separate. that we're all things. And that's where our knowing comes from, that we are all one. And when we know that and we're working in the flow, we're allowing ourselves to work in that flow, then our life changes in a twinkling of an eye. And that's it. Namaste.